Yeah. Well, not quite. It's got to be lined to take out with sound absorbing material. Not quite. It's a little bit more complicated than that. When you're doing the acoustics experience today, I'll talk to you then. Is that all right? Can I talk to you then? Yeah.
If we wanted to improve the frequency range of the drive, we do that, like, because the supply drivers goes down to 44.
Whether those are just sort of contingency values. Yes, the purpose of porting or designing a transmission line, they're simply to take the frequency range much lower. Significant, yeah. But when you say of the drive, well, I don't have time to talk about it in detail. When you're doing the acoustics experience? Thursday. I can perhaps talk to you then about it. Is that all right?
Do you know how much it like?
I was going to illustrate that today, but I didn't have time to do that.
Is it?
It's significant. Oh, very
Okay,
significant.
so
Is that all right? Yes, sir.
Sorry, I was just going to
Here's your live stream.
Yeah.
You should be seeing that now. So you're good to go.
Okay, I don't need to do anything.
Basically, it's already set up for you, so it'd be ideal if you could use this one.
So then you will come and get this.
Oh, so I'm going to take this with me.
Okay.
I'm just using this to set it up.
Yeah, I always use this.
So it's good to go. At the end of the lecture, I'll turn the live stream off.
All right.
Yep. So you don't have to do anything. It's all ready to go.
Do you know how to use these things?
Yeah. What do you want to use?
If say I want to draw something like on a PowerPoint slide.
Go to annotate and go to picture, and that will come over here. So, yep. And then you can get this pen and you can write on the left hand. And then you can come over to the left here and clear the page.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can constantly have that on your. Do you want to show that on the live stream?
Yeah, I
Okay.
might.
Okay. So just go annotate it and go yeah. And they'll see what it is on here.
All
That
right.
makes sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Are you good? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Todd. Todd. Just a second.
This isn't the whole class. Oh, it's still there.
You go into it.
Yeah, is that alright?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we can just close it.
What's this incognito thing?
It's just so that it doesn't save my passwords on your computer.
Sneaky.
So just press Control Shift N.
Incognito. Yeah. Is it at Auckland Uni?
Oh no, it's
Oh, what? This working? Hello. Do you need the mic or not?
if there is one, it's easier.
Yeah,
Kind of like that.
I will turn it on. I will turn it on. If this works, if you, I'll just tell them. Okay. Hello, everyone. Before we get into Property 251, we have students Anna here to talk about AOS to you for a couple minutes. So I'll let them take over.
Okay, hi guys. I'm Anna and this is Kirian. We're from AILS, which is this Property Student Association here at Auckland Uni. So basically what we do is we organise like all the social networking events for property students. So throughout the year we've got lots of really cool social events like pub crawls. Our first one's tonight and we'll have another one later in the year. Networking where you can like meet people that are working in the property industry and that's really helpful, and they can also help you get jobs and all that sort of stuff. So come along to our events, and if you want to sign up to be a member of AILS, which is only $10 for the whole year, you get discounts on all of our social events. And yeah, so keep up to date with us. Join our Facebook group. There's heaps of cool things on there, like about our social events, job opportunities. Yeah, and also something we run throughout the year is our interfaculty sports, which I'll get Karen to talk about.
Cool. So we have interfaculty sports where we face against the other faculty. So if you're in AILS, we'd like you to participate and like play for the Property Pirates. We have Touch coming up. If you are interested in playing any sports throughout the year, just get in contact with me or flick the AILS Facebook page a message, or just go through the Auckland Uni interfaculty sports page and they'll like direct you to like registrations and stuff like that. Cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Okay, back to Property 251. We should be live. If ever you are not able to attend our class here, physically be present in this room, there is a YouTube page set up for live streaming this session so you can hear everything what's going on in class, everything what's projected on the screen, and also, of course, to participate in Kahoot and answer questions, which is the second step towards getting your participation marks. The first step was watching all of the videos for Lecture 2 for this review session. Do you have any questions before we begin? Anything? So you may have noticed that for this review session, I posted an additional tutorial video. That video focuses entirely on calculations. And I want you not to overlook that resource, because it's the time when I would have spent in class solving questions in front of you. This is for you now the resource that is completely, entirely online. You can sit down, pause. I use the calculator on the screen so you can see exactly which keys I'm pressing and how to solve various time value of money questions that was for this review session. And the problem set that I'm going through within that tutorial is also posted on Canvas. If you ever wanted to just solve it maybe on your own, you have a clean version as well. And in the tutorial, I go step by step solving all of those questions. So really in the review sessions, we're not going to dedicate much time to actual calculations. It's more of a recap of the whole of the videos that you would have watched online on your own. So how many of you have got hands on a financial calculator, HP 10B? So most of you would already have it. Have you tried solving any of the questions, attempting maybe quizzes, being brave enough? There's not many, but you do have 2 more days before quizzes are due on Canvas. So there were questions on Piazza whether there is a difference between embedded quizzes in the video and the Canvas quizzes. There is a difference. The quizzes at the end of the video are really just for me to track your participation in the online component of watching the videos. Canvas quizzes is the second, it's the different assessment that you have to complete. That is done after class, after our review sessions. So time value of money. I said in our introduction lecture, this is the most basic concept in finance, but it is the most important. And honestly, we cannot move on to anything else in this class until you build a solid understanding of what is time value of money. And what is time value of money? Well, simply put, it's the money that's the concept that the money received in the present is more valuable than the same sum in the future. That is all that you need to appreciate. That why is it that money today are more valuable than money tomorrow? Well, the reason is very simple. Because money has the potential to work for you. You don't really need to do much. It works for you even when you're sleeping. It has the potential to be invested, and while it's invested, it has the potential to earn interest. So this is why money has time value. So why is there this component, the interest? What is interest? Well, depends on which end of the stick you are. The interest can either be the cost of using someone else's money, or it can be the rent that you're receiving from somebody who uses your money. So you can be either paying that interest or you can be receiving that interest. Why should you be, if you're an investor, why should you be receiving that interest? Well, there are several reasons for it. And the first of those reasons is the opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is basically answering the question of spending or saving. It's the question of what if. What am I leaving on the table by going with this option rather than spending my money all at once today? It's a simple question. What if, instead of buying a lunch on campus, what if I bring a sandwich with me from home? And instead, I can use that money to buy a gift from my girlfriend or my boyfriend. What kind of benefits or gains can I get from that by making that small sacrifice? And of course, as the bigger sacrifice you make, the greater rewards you can reap from those decisions. So when it comes down to money questions and the opportunity cost, you want to ask yourself, what else would you do with the money you're about to spend on a single decision? Surely you have, say, $100. It's right there. You can go and make a decision to spend it right now and enjoy it right now. Or you can make a decision to not spend it today and instead postpone for a period of time and then enjoy it later on. But of course, for making the sacrifice of not enjoying it today, you have to be compensated. And the interest is the compensation for the sacrifices that you're making, that you're postponing your consumption today and not enjoying that today. So we all are presented with these opportunity costs. We can make decisions. Which path do we choose? There is also this thing as inflation. And inflation affects everyone and everything. Over time, things are just becoming more and more costly to produce. What you could buy with your $100 a year ago, you just cannot buy the same amount today. So just for this simple factor as inflation, you want to be compensated. If you look at the opportunity cost, that is really the gain. That is for you looking at the question or an issue and understanding what are my benefits, what gains can I receive from this investment. But there is also a downside to any decision that you make. And with the investment, you are committing to a decision that involves time. But whenever there is time involved, it involves uncertainties. Surely I can be certain about the next 50 minutes I'm going to spend here with you in class. But what is going to happen a year from now? How certain am I about confidently saying what's going to happen? If, say, I have $2,000 that I have an option of investing in it, and you have a friend who comes to you and they desperately need that $2,000 and they say, in 1 year from now, we'll pay you $2,500. So you will get compensating for waiting for a year to get that $2,000 back. But what if you're no longer friends with that person and that person never pays you back? Or any other things that might come up that you will never see your $2,000 back. So that means that with any decision that you make, there is going to be a risk involved. And the greater the downside risks, the greater the chances that you will never see that $2,000 again, the greater, of course, the risk that's associated with that decision. Now, I guess the time value of money becomes even more important is when we start talking about the compound interest. And Albert Einstein said that he called compound interest the most powerful force in the universe. He went even further that called it the eighth wonder of the world. He basically said, though he who understands it earns it, he who doesn't pays it. With compound interest, you'll see that if you're receiving compound interest, you're better off. But if you're paying interest, of course, if compound interest is charged, you will be paying more interest. So with compound interest, it's that ability earning interest on interest. It's imagine a snowball. When you're making a snowman, you start with just a small clump of snow. As you're rolling it on the ground, it becomes a huge ball. It's the same concept with the compound interest, except it's not the snow, it's the money. You start with a small amount, But as time goes by, it becomes a much larger sum of money. So the concept of earning interest on interest is very powerful. You can, I guess, appreciate it better if we just have a quick example. I'm going to try. You can view compound. So with interest, we have options. We have compound interest, and we have simple interest. And with an investment, when you're making an initial investment, let's look at it as a parent. So let's say you have $100 that you will invest. So time period 0. This is the parent. Now this parent will produce children. After 1 year, the child of this parent, so after 1 year, you will get your $100 back. But that parent has a child of, say, let's say you were earning 10%. That parent will get $10. That's their child. That's the additional, that's the interest that you earn on that account. This is not the best pen to use, but so if you were just went for an option of simple interest, the thing is every year your child doesn't change. Your child will be represented by $10 that you get year after year. So it's only the parent that earns interest. It's always calculated on $100. Whether you're at the end of year 1, you're at the end of year 100, it's only the parent who produces that $10 child every year. But with compound interest, that parent, after year 1, it becomes 110. So for the second year, when you're calculating interest, you're calculating interest not just on the initial amount of $100, but you're now calculating it for $110. So you will be getting more interest on that initial investment. And all of it is just the difference between the word of compound and simple. You personally did not have to make any more effort. All you have done is you've chosen the option that gives you compound interest instead of going with simple interest. So the money is just working for you. You just have to be smart about what options or decisions you make of how that money is going to work for you. So if you, like I said, so if at the end of year 1, your account grows to 110, and in the first year, that was calculated on this amount, on just $100 interest. So at the end of the first year, whether you went with simple or compound interest, both of them will give you 110 in the end. But if you continue with compound interest, at the end of year 2, it's this whole amount that will start earning interest. With simple interest, it's always this. It's always just $100 that earns interest. With compound, in year 2, it's going to be 110, which means by the end of year 2, you will end up with 121. So you start off, this should be 0. So by the end of year 1, you will be 110. In year 2, you will be 121. That's with compound interest. If you have simple interest, you go to 110, but every year all you're going to be doing is adding $10 year after year. In year 3, it's now this $121 that's earning interest. With simple interest, it's still the same 100 that earns interest. So you will end up with, again, this is assuming you're getting 10% interest. You end up with 133.1 versus you would have had 130. year 4, 146, 41. Here, you just end up with 140. So the simple difference, the only difference here is how the interest is calculated. Whether it's only the parent that earns the interest, or if it's the parent and their children earn interest. And with compound interest, it is the parent and the children, so it always compounds. Now, we are talking here about small amount, and you might think that's insignificant difference, $6. But what if you put in 100,000? Well, if you put in 100,000, you're going to get, that would be a difference of 6,000. You know, just after 4 years, you get extra 6,000 that you can go on vacation or do something. So you can see that over time, that difference is going to get bigger and bigger. And all of that is just the power of compound interest. So let's move on to our Kahoot questions, and we will review some more of the concepts that you have done and would have seen in the lecture, just to reinforce some of them. Now remember, if you want to get your participation marks, you must use your UPI. So is Kalaman is in class here right now? I can put him out and then he can rejoin us. Okay, I think definitely most of the students got the message that they need to use their UPIs to participate in Kahoot. They can still participate with any name, but they just won't get participation marks. That's the thing. All right, so we're going to start. I'm sure you've been listening to me carefully. Yes, you're all very clever, and $1 today is more than $1 tomorrow refers to the concept of time value of money. The concepts of compounding and discounting are associated with present values and future values, and which way we are, in what point in time we want to look at our investment or payment. Well, I'm going to tell you that this is a trick question. It's not just one of them, it's all of them. If you think about it, why does money has time value? I have told you that it's because of its ability to be invested, and then while it's invested, it earns interest. But with that payment of interest, there is, of course, comes risk and uncertainty, whether you will ever get your investment back, not even talking about the additional interest that you get from it. It is about your consumption preferences, and sometimes consuming that money today is actually worth to you a lot more than any compensation you get in the future. Sometimes you might be choosing to making an informed decision that you do decide to consume today rather than wait for another year or whatever time period. Inflation, as I said, all investments are affected by inflation. It's just something that we cannot remove from the equation. And we do have opportunities, and that's opportunity cost, and we have choices. So that's why, for all of these reasons, money has time value. So I'm very happy with you are paying attention to what's happening, and majority of giving me the right answer. So if you decide to go for the option of receiving $11,000 in 1 year, the compensation for you for waiting to get that money is the difference between what you were offered today versus what you're going to get 1 year from now. So the difference is $1,000 is your compensation for waiting to get this $11,000. Well, that is good that we're divided, really. Majority still rules, but quite a few of you chose another option. So when you're determining the present value, it refers to discounting. So with this question, you know what you're going to get in the future. So let's say you've been offered $110 in the future, and you also know that the return on that payment that you get 1 year from now is 10%. When you go back in time, so if this is future value, you're trying to find what is the present value of this $110. And with the concept of time value of money, we know that money, the same amount of money is worth more than it is worth in the future. At the same time, what you have today in the future will be worth more. Yeah? So, which means that really, anything that you look at in the future will always be greater than what you're looking at today. They're still equivalent because all you're doing is you're adding interest to that. But in this case, your present value is $100. So what you're doing is you're making $110 and you're removing all of the compensation in the form of interest that you received that year. So you're removing that $10 to get to a smaller value of 100. They are equivalent because all you're doing is you're just removing the interest. But as far as the value to you, today this $100 is worth $100, but a year from now this $100 is worth $110. But whenever you're looking for present value, you're going from a bigger amount to smaller. So whenever you're going from big to small, you have to discount it. And we do. So therefore, it refers to the concept of discounting. Compounding is the other way. So if you knew that you have $100 today, at 10%, you need to grow this $100 to find what the future value of it, so you are compounding it. So let's think about this question. When you're compounding something, does your money earn interest on interest? Tick, it does. You have an ability to earn interest on interest. In the process of compounding, is present value known? Yes, it is known, because in the process of compounding, you're finding future value of a present amount. So if I want to compound $100, so I know how much I have today, and I'm trying to find how much am I going to have in the future. So present value is known to you. By compounding, you can find out how much the investment will be worth to you in the future. Yes, you are finding the future value of a present amount. With compounding, your money grows faster because you're using compound interest, which is the first option of your interest earning on interest. So yes, it is true. So in the process of compounding, all of these factors are true. I mean, in Kahoot, it just doesn't allow me for you to be able to choose all four, but it's still, I think, a useful exercise to go through all of these answers. nearly got you. So what is this 1 plus I raised to the nth power? What is this expression used for? If you look at it, so what are the components of it? You're adding interest to 1 and then raising it to however many years the power is, and is represented however the length of your investment. So within this formula, if I want if I want to find the future value, I'm still missing some components of it. And that is, I don't know what was the initial amount of my investment. So it is not just the future value. It will get me towards finding the future value, but it is not an expression for just purely finding the future value. It is also not present value expression for finding the present value. What perhaps would help if I show you this slide. And these are the different time value of money factors. And you will see that the most basic factor is for finding the future value interest factor. And you can see that that expression, 1 plus I raised to the nth power, is featured in every single factor. Whether you're looking at present value, whether you're looking at annuity, sinking fund, mortgage payment, that expression is built into every single factor. So it is, I guess, the most important for you to remember. So what a factor is, basically it allows you to then, if you know what the factor is, you just then take your investment and multiply that by the factor. So if you have a future value interest factor, you take the initial amount, say $100, I can multiply it by its future value interest factor in order to find future value. If I have a present value interest factor, I take future value and multiply that by the present value interest factor. So you use interest factors to multiply by either your payment or your investment amount or the money you get in the future. So it's always just a component, a starting point towards finding present values or future values. So from this expression, you can also see from the future value interest factor, you can, as long as you have your investment, obviously, for a positive amount of time, half a year, 1 year, and so on. So future value interest factor, because we're talking about the concept of compounding, well, if I say future value equals present value times future value interest factor. So we know that future value is greater than present value. So in order for me to go from a smaller amount, which is the present value, I need to multiply that present value by something that is greater than a factor of present value. So it's always going to be greater than 1. Yeah? So to go from something bigger than present value, I need to multiply it by a value that's greater than 1. Whereas with present value interest factors, so if I need to find present value, and I take future value and multiply that by the present value interest factor, I need to go from something that's bigger to smaller, so I need to multiply by a value that is going to be less than 1. So that just whenever you're calculating interest factors, future value interest factors are always greater than 1. And you get the idea behind it is because you're compounding. You're increasing something from present to the future. Present value interest factor, you're discounting, so you need to multiply that future value by a factor that is always less than 1. So this expression is purely just the interest factor. Not enough time. But those of you who did have time to answer this question, so let's look at it. 5% in this case is the nominal interest rate that you get, 5%, and you invest $100 at 5% per year. That's compounded 2 times a year. The reason I have to write it so abbreviated because Kahoot only allows 90 characters, so I have to be creative how I word my questions. So if the future values now moves from 128 to 128.34, you still earn the same 5% as your nominal interest rate. What happened? Well, what happened is you just changed the frequency of your compounding. So you went from 2 times per year to something more than 2. Maybe it's now quarterly compounding or monthly compounding. So that is another power of compound interest, is that not only it earns interest on interest, but the more frequently you compound that interest, the more money, the more interest you will earn in the end. What does compounding frequency mean? If, say, I have somebody is offering me 12% per year, so that is the nominal rate, and they said that compounding is once a year, so which means that interest is calculated only at one point in time at the end of the year. And if I started off with 100, I'm going to end up at 12% per year. I'm going to end up with 112 because interest was just calculated once, 112, easy to figure it out. What if I have now m equals 12, which is monthly compounding? What does it mean? Well, that means that instead of calculating interest just once a year, you actually have 12 points during that year when interest is calculated. Now, that interest is not calculated every time at 12%. The interest is calculated by 12% is the annual, but you divide it by the number of compounding frequency, which is 12. So every time the interest is calculated, it's calculated at 1% per month. Not per year, but you're getting that every time interest is calculated, it's 1%. So on your calculator, you can see the difference. So if I go to 12 payments and I have 100, after 1 year with compound interest, I'm going to have 112.68. So the difference of the 68 cents is simply because I moved from annual compounding to monthly. And which means, so the way I got to this 112.68 is because, so I started with 100%. after 1 month, you have not 100%, start with $100. After 1 month, you get $101. So then it's $101 that's going to earn 1% after another month. So if this is your new present value, you end up with 102.01. After 1 more month, another 1% is going to be added to 102.1. So you're going to have 103.03. And you get the idea that every month, another 1% is added. And always we are calculating our interest on the previous balance, not the original $100. It's not just we earn $1 extra every month. You see that it starts to go $1, 1 cent, and just small increments where by the end of the year we get extra money on our account. So in this case, so you can see that the nominal interest rates are the same, 12% you get per year. But you get to different future values. The difference there is because you have more frequent compounding. So let's see. Again, most of you in this case have chosen the right answer. So to compare rates that have different nominal interest percentages, you have to calculate effective annual rate. So let's say you have a rate, yes, so you have, well, in this case, you have the same nominal interest rates of 12%, but when you look at the frequency of compounding, they're actually not even the same, because they're not the same because they don't produce the same future value. So one is 112, the other is 112.68. So even though nominal rates are the same, they're not equivalent. So in order to compare this 12%, you have to compare apples to apples, and the only way to do it is to calculate what is the actual effective annual rate for each of these options. For an option where it's only compounding once per year, effective rate, so if annual compounding, if m equals I, nominal is always going to equal to effective. Whenever you move away from annual compounding to more frequent, nominal will be always less than effective. Your actual effective rate will be greater. And in this case, our effective rate is 12.68%. Here, effective rate is 12%. Here, the rate is 12.68%. So with this example, these two nominal rates are the nominal amount is the same, but they're not equivalent because they don't produce the same future value. Well, what if I gave you this option? So you have monthly compounding and the nominal percent of 20.45 versus annual compounding and a nominal percent of 22.47. If I didn't give you this part of equation, if I only told you these rates at first, well, you can't really tell. They are different, so you would say, you wouldn't know, are they equivalent? You have to consider what is the frequency of compounding in order to compare them. And you can do that by, say you have $100 and, why do I always keep percent? You have $100 and calculate future value of this $100, assuming monthly compounding at 20.45 and annual compounding at 22.47. When you calculate future value, they'll be the same, which means I can say that these two nominal interest rates are equivalent because both of them will give me the same future value. So let's do one more question. So what is a reciprocal? Reciprocal is dividing a number by itself. And in this case, what you're doing, and present value is said to be reciprocal of future value, and future value is reciprocal of present value. So in this case, a reciprocal of compound interest factor is 1 divided by the future value interest factor. And in this case, it would give you the present value. Okay, well, so a few things to remember. You have to do the quiz by the end of Friday, which is on Canvas. It's all computational. If you need practice with solving questions that relate to time value of money, watch the tutorial that is available for that review session. If you have any questions, do come and see me. And otherwise, you need to start watching lecture 3 for next week. And have a good rest of the week. Yep. Just close this. Yes, please, that's one. Oh yes, the embedded quizzes in the online videos. You have to, well, when you watch online lectures, do you choose the option of doing the quiz? If you did not, then I will not be able to track whether or not you watched it, so I won't be able to award you any marks for it. So right now, can I do that again? So you have to email me, because if right now you go and do the quiz, it will show me that you only watched for a split second and skip all the way to the quiz. It's kind of, so why don't you email me? So for this time, I'm sure it's a learning for everyone. So
workshops is these are the learning objectives. I think it's very similar to what Barbara had the other day. What's really important about these workshops is it is not my job to stand here and tell you things. I'm not here to teach you, although I will hopefully say some things that get you thinking and maybe answer some questions for you. But what do you guys want from these sessions? What works for you? What doesn't? You're all in your third year or so, aren't you? At university, so you know what works for you and what doesn't. I would really love it if you emailed your opinion to Barbara. Don't email me. She's the one that gets the big bucks. You can email Barbara and tell her what you want from them, because I'll take them for the next 9 weeks after this. And you let me know, do you want to go over the readings, the work that Barbara's done on the Monday, or would you rather go deeper into things? I don't know. So whatever works for you guys. If you have an opinion, email it to Barbara. She'd really love to hear it so that we can structure this in a way that suits you, that serves you. That doesn't sound, you know, I hope that makes sense. But so the lecture that Barbara gave on Monday about discourse and rhetoric in organisations, you can see from here that what people say and what people really mean might be two different things. Let's get some co-construction, some backwards and forwards going. What does discourse mean? What do you think of discourse as? Does anyone have an opinion? It's not a test, but what did you take from Monday? Organizational discourses. Does anyone? What do you think?
So like you're meant to do things in that certain context.
So it's contextual and it's an assumption about how you are meant to do things. Yeah? Are there any other ideas about what it is? No right and no wrong. Yeah. So I'll tell you guys, before I became a PhD candidate, I was a health professional. I worked in a New Zealand DHB, and my job was to be a midwife. And when I think of the organizational discourses around being a midwife, so discourses for me are undeclared assumptions. They are political. They are taken for granted ways of understanding what something is. So my job as a midwife, there were discourses of hierarchy. So the doctors were above me. I was above the professional staff who would do the cleaning. The nurses were over here. I was over here. When I went here to assist in cesareans, then